Imagine receiving a message from someone you love. They tell you they need space. They say they want to be left alone. Nothing about the message immediately tells you that something is wrong. So you wait. You respect their decision. You assume they will contact you when they are ready. But what happens when the person sending those messages is already dead? In July of 2026, 38-year-old Elisabeth-Jane Ross traveled to Greece. Elizabeth was Scottish and came from the Edinburgh area. Reports say she arrived in Greece during the final days of June and initially stayed with friends in Kypseli, a district near the port of Piraeus. For several weeks, nothing about her visit attracted public attention. Then on July 15, Elizabeth reportedly told the people she had been staying with that she was leaving. She said she planned to meet American friends in Kypseli, a busy neighborhood in central Athens. That was the last confirmed day on which her friends saw her. But it was not the last day that people heard from her phone. Messages continued to appear. According to reports, Elizabeth's family received messages saying that she needed time to herself and wanted to be alone. Another reported message suggested that she was leaving for a Greek island. On the surface, those words offered an explanation for her silence. She was safe. She wanted privacy. There was no reason to panic, but investigators now believe those messages may not have been written by Elizabeth at all. 3 days after she was last seen, a man entered a derelict building in the Kypseli area of Athens. The building had been abandoned and was in poor condition. Inside, he noticed a strong and disturbing smell. As he searched for its source, he discovered the suitcase. Inside that suitcase were the remains of a woman. The discovery was reported to police on July 18. There was no identification with the body, no passport, no document that immediately told investigators who she was. There were also no obvious injuries that explained how she had died. The condition of the remains made the investigation even more difficult. Police had a body, they had a suitcase, they had an abandoned building, but they did not have a name, a confirmed cause of death, or a clear explanation for how the suitcase arrived there. For 11 days, the woman remained unidentified. Investigators examined fingerprints and shared information with international authorities. Those fingerprints were eventually connected to records held in the United States, where Elizabeth had previously worked. The unidentified woman finally had a name. She was Elisabeth-Jane Ross. Her family was informed, but identifying Elizabeth did not solve the mystery. It created an even more disturbing question. What had been happening with her phone? Investigators learned that someone had apparently continued using the device. Messages had allegedly been sent to Elizabeth's father and other people while pretending to be her. The purpose, police reportedly believe, was to convince her family that she was alive and had chosen to disappear temporarily. Think about what that would require. Someone would need access to Elizabeth's phone. They would need to know who to contact. They would need to understand how Elizabeth communicates well enough to produce messages that did not immediately cause alarm. And most importantly, they would need a reason to stop her family from looking for her. The messages did not ask for help. They did not announce an emergency. They created distance. They encouraged the people close to Elizabeth to wait. They may have given whoever controlled the phone something extremely valuable. Time. Time before anyone reported her missing. Time before anyone began checking hospitals, airports, or hotels. Time before investigators attempt to trace her final movements. And perhaps time to remove evidence. Police are now examining Elizabeth's phone records and attempting to establish where the device traveled after she was last seen. Security camera footage is also being reviewed. Investigators want to know whether Elizabeth reached the people she said she intended to visit. They want to know who was with her during her final hours. They also want to know who carried the suitcase into the abandoned building. The location itself creates another mystery. Was Elizabeth killed inside that building? Did she enter it willingly? Was she brought there after her death? At this stage, none of those questions has a confirmed answer. The suitcase reportedly produced no evidence that immediately identified another person. The post-mortem examinations also failed to establish an exact cause of death. Police said there were no visible injuries, and reports said there were no clear evidence of physical struggle. That does not mean Elizabeth died naturally. It also does not prove that another person killed her. Toxicology and laboratory examination are required to determine whether medication, drugs, poison, or another substance played a role. Until those results are complete, the cause of Elizabeth's death remains unknown. But investigators are treating the circumstances seriously because of how her remains were concealed. Someone placed Elizabeth inside the suitcase. Someone left that suitcase in an abandoned building. And according to investigators, someone continued communicating through her phone. Those facts cannot be explained by a simple disappearance. There are now two timelines at the center of this case. The first is Elizabeth's physical timeline. She was staying with friends. She left on July 15. She said she planned to meet other people. Her remains were discovered on July 18th. The second timeline belonged to her phone. When was the final message definitely written by Elizabeth? When did another person allegedly take control of the device? Where was the phone when each message was sent? Was it close to the abandoned building? Did it travel to another part of Athens? And did the person using it make a mistake that could reveal their identity? Digital evidence can preserve information long after a physical crime scene has been disturbed. A phone can record connection to nearby towers. Applications can retain login activity. Messages can reveal changes in vocabulary, punctuations, and behavior. Security camera can show who carried a particular object through a street. Transport record can show where a person traveled. None of those clues alone guarantees an answer. Together they can rebuild a timeline that someone may have tried to erase. One of the most important questions is whether the people Elizabeth planned to meet actually existed. Reports say she told her friend in Kypseli that she was going to stay with American acquaintances in Kypseli. Police must now determine whether she reached them, whether they were expecting her, and whether she communicated with them before leaving. The answer could reveal whether Elizabeth was following a genuine plan or whether someone had persuaded her to go somewhere else. Investigators are also examining her journey into Greece. Authorities want to establish how she arrived, whether she traveled alone, and where she stayed. Greek and Scottish police are cooperating while Elizabeth's family is receiving official support. As of the making of this video, no publicly identified person has been convicted or proven responsible for Elizabeth's death. The toxicology results have not been released. The exact location where she died was not been confirmed, and the person who controlled her phone has not been publicly identified. That uncertainty is important. Online speculation can easily turn an acquaintance, friend, or a witness into a suspect without evidence. This case must be followed through confirmed police finding, forensic results, and documented information. But one fact remained deeply unsettling. After Elizabeth disappeared, her phone apparently continued telling people not to search for her. It created an image of a woman who was alive, safe, and choosing to be alone. Meanwhile, her remains were hidden inside a suitcase in an abandoned Athens building. Whoever sent those messages may have believed the phone would protect their secrets. Instead, it could become the evidence that exposed them. Investigators now need to identify the moment Elisabeth stopped controlling her own device, because hidden somewhere between her final genuine message and the first message written by somebody else may be the point at which her journey changed completely. Who had her phone? How did that person know what to say? Why was it so important to stop Elisabeth's family from looking for her? And what happened during the 3 days between the moment she was last seen and the discovery inside that abandoned building? Until those questions are answered, the messages remain more than words on a screen. They are a digital trail left behind by someone who wanted the world to believe that Elisabeth-Jane Ross was still alive. This documentary is based on publicly available reporting and is presented for documentary and commentary, education, and public awareness. The investigation remains ongoing. No individual should be considered responsible unless guilt is established through verified evidence and the appropriate legal process. Thank you.